Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay with this? I don't have the over-the-ear one. Yes, I know. As my Uncle Earl said, yes, because, you know, the name my folks gave to me was Kent. And what he says, my brother and my sisters, they said, Tim and Tony, you can't get them to say a word, but Kent and Karen, you can't get them to shut up. So unfortunately, I'm going to be true to that description because I have to. We're going to have a quick word of prayer. If you would, let's stand and we'll ask God's blessing on this time together. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, our God is one. Lord, we're thankful for this opportunity to learn from this holy ministry and to see what we can be able to do here. We're thankful for the ability to be able to serve your holy body, O Lord, as we serve those who are in our community. And in all things may we do this for thy glory, for our salvation and salvation of those around us. We ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I have to introduce this beautiful couple here. They are very beautiful and dear to us. They are also our godchildren. We have known one another ever since, oh my goodness, how many years? 25 years at least?
How old is she?
23 years. Oh, a little, 24 years. We met when both our oldest girls were in their mother's wombs at a Bradley class there. I think it was in Pasadena, right? Sierra Madre. And of course, I came straight from church, kind of dressed like this, with my wife. And they were sitting across from us, and I thought they were going to fall out of their seat. And I thought either we're scandalizing or they're very interested. So at the break, I went over beeline to say hello to them. And, it was kind of like that Casablanca. It's the beginning of a beautiful relationship. We are so blessed to know them, to have our children growing up with their children, and also to see how they have just flourished within their own person, their family, but especially also within a great blessing for the Orthodox Church. And coming from St. Anthony's, as you know, St. Anthony's is a much larger community and larger facilities that we have, yet there's a lot that they have to be able to offer to us in terms to give us an idea of what we could seek to do. Oh, I did St. Andrews. I said St. Anthony's. That's nice. I didn't say St. Nicholas for once. Isn't that good?
He's growing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you translated very well. And you need a bot for that either. Okay, so as a result, the ministry that they're doing at St. Andrews, it doesn't mean we have to replicate it exactly the same here. But however, and whatever we can do to be able to help with this really important ministry, we have to understand that it was the church for many years and the families of those who fell asleep in the Lord that took care of the departed. Here in America, we have a whole industry that's kind of taken over that and kind of conditioned the thinking about that. And even today, there's kind of a reaction against some of that. But I think what we want to do is have an open heart and mind to see what they are doing over there at St. Andrews. And then we as a group here can form hopefully a ministry team that can see what we possibly can do. There is a real important need. I would just remind you that I think this church and some that are here, some that are here, we've helped with a total of about 3 people to help with the burial of some of the people that's needed that. And so there's a growing need for that. So we're just very thankful to have Chris and Christy Gonzalez-Aiden with us here, and God bless you. So however you want to be able to do this, and from time to time, I may jump in just to underscore some of the things that you're doing. Go ahead. Yes. God bless you.
Do you want to stand?
I know.
She wanted to sit, but I thought, do you want? Can we stand? Because I feel a little bit more.
Okay.
Like I could see everybody.
So it was our understanding that this first section was more about this first time together, was more about talking about people who want to be prepared in a traditional Orthodox manner in the parish, more as like, not necessarily people that want to be participating in the ministry necessarily, and we were going to talk more about that this afternoon. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is more a general presentation of what, at St. Andrew, what our burial society does typically.
Yes. We're both introverts, so
Yeah.
just put that out there.
What we do at St. Andrews is really what we are doing for the person before they die, in that at the time of their death, we're actually treating them in the same manner of loving them and caring for them and doing the same things that were done before they died in terms of washing their bodies and dressing them. So it's a very non-invasive, loving practice, and there's no magic, there's nothing special that we're doing, but I will say that the Holy Spirit is present in this, and we do follow the Christian Ending book, and there's prayers before, and then the Psalms are being read during the preparation, and I really feel like it's such God is present in that space and helping us, and sometimes, it's not always, but sometimes it's evident on the face of the repose. From the beginning to the end, it is just like, wow. And even we've had the mortuary that we work with, we've had the mortician that has helped us so much has been amazed also. Even knowing what we do is so simple, and yet how transformative that can be for the person. So that's just the little background. You're going to talk a little bit about why we do this in this way.
Yeah. So first of all, we were actually, as we were driving here, we were talking about us being a part of this ministry. And one of the first things, when she was interested in pursuing this ministry at St. Andrew, I turned to her and said, "Have you ever seen a dead body?" And she said, "No." And I went, "Okay." But that heartfelt motivation to care for people, even at a very seemingly difficult time, and I say seemingly because you walk into a situation like this with a lot of preconceived ideas about what it's going to feel like. You're faced with your own mortality. There's a lot of mind things that happen when you're walking into a situation like this. But it is, as Christy was saying, it's a continuation of just how we love each other. I mean, I have been blessed with being able to care for brothers who I've known, who both died natural causes and tragic causes. And to be able to be with them and to think, I get to be the last person who lovingly takes care of you, of your physical body, and to see the opportunity again for loving the family and the people who are left behind. Because it's not just about the reposed, it's that community of people who may or may not know Orthodoxy. And that's another part of this too, is in doing something like this, we're not inventing something new, we're reclaiming something that used to be a common practice. It's a very, it seems novel to people that we would step in and say, no, we're going to do this, because there's a system in place now of saying you pass away, you call the mortuary, maybe a coroner is involved, you schedule the burial, it's done. And we say, we need to slow it down a little bit. And what we've noticed is in that space of the 2 or 3 days that maybe things don't move as quickly as people would like, it gives people the chance to face their grief and to maybe come to terms with the shock of it, to lovingly, sometimes the family will come in after some of the more difficult parts of the preparation are done and anoint the person with oil, lovingly put their hands on them, say goodbye to them one more time, before the funeral, before they're in front of everybody. And those have been some of the most precious, most sensitive times I've ever seen. We had a young man pass away through a car accident, and he was in his mid-20s. We had just celebrated Pascha, and he was heading up to St. John's Church in San Francisco, and he was in a car accident on the 5. So he's a 23-year-old Adam of blessed memory. He was a sweet soul. His father showed up. Now Adam was maybe about this tall, really stocky, tattoos of onion domes on his head. Very interesting young man, very sold out to Orthodoxy. His father comes, and they tell me the father's coming, and I'm like, oh, what's this guy going to look like, and how's he going to feel about us doing this to his son? A very timid, small man shows up, and he sits next to his son, and he just looks at me and he says, "Can I have?" Because he had no hair, right? He had nothing. He said, "Can I just have a fingernail?" And I had just trimmed the fingernails, and so I was like, "I'll get you something." So, but that little moment of being able to just give him something from a loss was so powerful to me, and just seeing the love of a father, because we talk about the love of a father all the time. It's very powerful to be in that place of facilitating that. So these are, when we hear Mary treasuring all these things up in her heart, that's part of this ministry, is we're treasuring up these little moments that help buoy us through our suffering. So we did make a note. I was going to talk about why we make this effort. That's a part of why we make the effort. The other part is to testify to people who don't understand our practice of relics, of our practice of hope in the resurrection, that the body is not to just be discarded, that it's not just the Amazon packaging that the thing came in. this is something that, as you look at the possibility of relics, as you look at the possibility of the testimony of a community lovingly taking care of somebody even after it seems they've left, that testimony to the mortuary we work with has been so powerful. To the families who don't know anything about Orthodoxy, to people who have had strained relationships with their children, who have come in and seen how we take care of them. We just had a lady pass away about, maybe it was a year ago. Her daughter and her were estranged, and her mother passed away suddenly. And in going through her house, she found all of the bulletins from St. Andrew that her mother had lovingly saved. And so, stacks. And so she was like, this place was important to her. So she came to St. Andrew and said, obviously my mother loved this place. Who are you? And then that activated the Burial Society, and then we were involved, and it was a very moving experience for her. It gave us a chance to love her, even though we didn't know her. So, yeah.
Okay. So,
Okay.
yeah, so as we've said, as Father John mentioned, this is the ancient practice of Christians. And, many people would prepare their loved ones in their homes. And the whole idea of cremation particularly is a recent practice. Definitely in Western society. And we as Orthodox Christians don't believe that we should choose to cremate because it's destroying this beautiful creation of our bodies.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Part of that is, too, because it's efficient. Cremation is efficient, and it's cheap. So in a society that is used to doing things quickly and efficiently, convenient, it's already in place. It's a great inconvenience to suddenly have a church come in and say, like, we'll prepare the body in the chapel, and is that legal? All these questions come up. So there's a lot to be said for inconvenience, because it's not really inconvenient. First of all, that's one thing that we have to stress. It's different every time, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be impossible. With God's help, we've done it now for almost 10 years, the two of us. So, and each time is different, but.
And I think the big thing usually comes down to the cost. The cost is so much cheaper to cremate than it is to buy a burial plot and mortuary services. So, with planning, it can be cheaper, and with the Burial Society being involved, it definitely cuts down the cost of the mortuary. So it's still really super challenging to try to buy a burial plot in a few days. So I think a very important piece of this, and thank you for being here, and plan. We want to give you the message of plan as much as you can. And
it even rhymes.
And even though with careful planning, it doesn't mean it's all going to go out without a hitch, but you're going to have it's going to be a much better experience for everybody. And I think that's why these packets are called, so these packets are from the Christian Ending, and they are a gift for my loved ones. I think that's so apropos because it's really, truly giving to your family by being prepared so that they can walk through the grief process with as little distraction with irritating little details. There's still going to be some of those, but as much of those that can be taken care of, the better it will be for them.
Are you all familiar with the Christian Ending? We've referenced it a couple times, but yeah, this has been a game changer as far as reclaiming this. So.
Can I jump in too
Please.
from a pastoral's point, but also an ecclesiastical point? At Orthodox Church, when we do a burial for someone, we do a funeral for someone, the whole service is prayer and care for taking care of the body as well as the soul that may be trying to keep close to the body. So we're praying that the soul be at rest, but we're taking care of the body. Here's the modern thing that most people don't know. No bishop that I know will give a permission to any pastor, priest to do a funeral if the body is cremated. I've had that happen several times. I've had it happen several times where the family, because there was a person, the person who died was the only person who was Orthodox. They died, the family didn't know any better. They did the same thing for the cheapest reasons. They come and approach us to even tell us. We didn't even know if the person was sick and needing to come and give them communion, to give them confession, to be able to give them holy unction, and be able to give them the opportunity of a burial. And then it's a fait accompli that we're told that they're cremated, and they want us to be able to hold a service. All we can do by any bishop, Orthodox bishop, is a Trisagion prayer, just like we did in the liturgy. Can't do a funeral, because the service itself deals with the whole person, body and soul. It's taking care of the whole body. If the body's not there, it's a moot point. If a person's done that purposely. Now, there's other places and others, 9/11, when they would hold whatever services they could for whatever remains they could be able to have. All right? And so, there's, in any situation we have that's with that, we always have to go to the bishop and get the approval. But we need to make it very clear in our own community that we just can't do a regular, normal funeral service. And there's different kind of funeral services. The one we're in Costa, there's also a funeral service for a child, which is totally different than the one we get to see. They're very beautiful services, but if the body's been destroyed purposely, we're not given permission by the bishop. So that some of you especially, because a lot of us are Orthodox or converted and come in, we need to make that very clearly known in some legal way. Seriously.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what these packets will help to do. But also just having the discussion. If you make it known that this is a church that practices that kind of thing, and it becomes something, it's a hard conversation to have. I mean, with loved ones, with your own family, yourself. But being able to normalize the conversation.
We were going to talk about this.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to grab my phone
Okay.
so we know how much time we have.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, there is.
So what time do we start? Do we know?
1:30?
We did it 1:30? Okay. Okay, cool.
Or was it? 33? 135.
Okay.
Stickler. Normalizing the conversation. What was I talking about? So making that a part of people who come here, and as people come into the church, as they see it being practiced. Like people at St. Andrew know about the Burial Society because they see us. I mean, the last one we had, like the church school was still going on, right? When the mortuary pulled up, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little awkward, but the kids, it's also part of their life
Yeah.
experience. We're not trying to hide death; we're trying to prepare for it.
And there's been a couple times where we've had a wedding going on and a preparation going on.
Baptism, wasn't there a baptism?
We had one.
Yeah, it was a.
We had a
very full
day
day.
where we had a wedding and a funeral on one day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
but I've been part of preparations in the midst of a wedding reception, so it does sort of.
What do you prepare the body?
So we have a side chapel at our church that was, as part of the building, was created with this in mind. So it has a separate AC unit in there. So
it's smaller.
It's
It's
small.
smaller.
Yeah, we can keep it cooler. It doesn't. Besides, I mean, everything else we bring in, and there's not a lot of equipment, or I mean, we don't have any equipment except a table, but we bring everything we need in to that little chapel.
If you've been to St. Andrew, or if you're planning on coming, let us know ahead of time so that we can show you the chapel. It's a beautiful chapel. It was painted by, you've seen it, some friends of ours now from Russia. We were blessed to go to Russia in 2018 to where they study. But they came and spent months painting this chapel dedicated to St. John, and it's a resurrection chapel.
Chrysostom.
Yeah, St. John Chrysostom. So I've prepared people in that space when the walls were white, and I've prepared it now with people with the saints looking down at us. I much prefer it that way. But I always think of the verse that says, "Better is the house of mourning than the house of feasting." That gravity of what is going on is so beautiful. It's such you lose moments like that, especially in a society that pushes death away constantly. So, yes.
Do you have something, or will you cover like A, B, C, D? These are the steps, because like I know a number of people here are converts as we are. And
Yeah.
we don't know what the promise is. I have that
Yeah,
book, but it
right.
isn't
Yeah.
evident.
In the second part of
Yeah.
today, we're going to go over.
And we have a list of basically what we follow. I'm going to do, we have an abbreviated list for this presentation, but then we do have specifics of A, B, and C that we follow.
I
So,
was thinking of what the actual whole
Practices.
thing is, not necessarily what you do, but what the deceased is going through.
Oh,
he would be the one to talk to
Yes.
about that. Yeah.
that's
That is
above our
outside
pay
of
grade.
our-
Yeah, that's.
Yes, that's I would love to hear that
I've been
too.
there from personal experience, but that's,
Well, but in reading some of the lives of the saints, there
Yeah.
have been visitation, not a lot. And you can learn a little bit, but you're uniquely fashioned and had a unique life, so your experience is going to reflect your own life.
Yeah.
But fear not, we are always with the
Oh,
Lord.
no, I wasn't asking where I was going to go after I
No, the
died.
experience.
Yeah, I was
Talk about-
asking where my body's going to be moved around to.
Okay.
And the next,
Oh.
between the time I'm deceased and the
Oh.
time I'm in the dirt.
I see.
That's what I'm.
Practical.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so
I'm not worried about it.
oftentimes.
Okay.
Did you want to answer this?
Good question.
Yeah.
We're streaming this and it's being recorded.
Okay.
I think it might be best and most efficient if you save your questions
Till the end.
Okay.
for later, because you're asking questions that nobody can hear, and you're not
Okay.
answering, you're not repeating your
Ah,
questions.
so we'll circle
Which
back.
is okay,
Got it.
but,
Yeah.
save your questions for last, write them down so you don't forget. And we'll proceed.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to
Yes.
do that part. So as we were preparing this, one of the things, and this is a nice large crowd for us, I want to make the point that if you got a knock on your door and it was the CHP and they said to you, "We have been informed, we're not going to tell you how, but we've been informed that in a certain number of days you are going to be in a horrible car accident." That's all we have. Good luck. And then they leave, right? So you're left with suddenly this strange awareness that your time is limited. You're going to do a couple different things. You're going to check your car, make sure all the restraints are, you're going to give yourself the best options, right? You're going to make sure that things are working on your car. Brakes are okay. Maybe you can minimize the damage, right? The other thing is you probably won't have your loved ones in the car with you for a while, right? You're going to take steps to prepare for something that you've been told is inevitable. You don't know how it's going to happen. You can see where this analogy is going, right? Okay? We know, unless the Lord comes, that we have a moment in time that is our moment in time. It is extremely helpful to those family members who are caring for you and the church that's caring for you to have things written down, to have a casket, to have a burial spot, to do the planning that you would normally do for any event that you know is coming up, right? This is a very important thing so that you don't turn something hard into something tragic, right? The more work that you do now to talk about it, to make plans, it's a hard conversation. We've been doing this for almost a decade now, and we have a handful of people at St. Andrew who've actually done everything. And they are our champions, right? And so we're making an effort. This is part of an effort, and we've talked to Father Josiah. We're going to be doing kind of a church-wide thing. You're our guinea pigs. So thank you. They thank you, because we're trying to drive home the idea that we've seen people at our church who've been solid people in our church, but when they died, their families fall apart because their wishes, although maybe verbally expressed, weren't written down. They weren't solid, and it ends up tearing families apart.
Animosity between.
Siblings,
Yeah.
it's awful. It's awful to watch. It's awful for a priest to be a part of, for a church community to be a part of. A lot can be done to mitigate that ahead of time. So some of the basics are figuring out these papers will kind of guide you through some of the steps. We're working with people on paperwork for living trusts and stuff like that. So getting your house in order before you leave your house. We cannot stress that enough. It's a known factor, right? Our time will end, and if you leave it a mess, it'll be a mess. So please, please, please.
And I think it's important to plan to do this stuff. Give yourself maybe some type of deadline just to encourage yourself to fill out paperwork. And then plan something fun as a tangible reinforcement for doing it, because it's not necessarily a fun thing, but I think that it's, obviously it's necessary, but it's also something that's going to give you such great peace of mind to know that you've done it. And then you kind of, there may be some things you need to revisit as you move along in life, but also just to know, that's done. That is done. So my family can know.
When we budget, it's the same thing. It hurts, but there's a security that happens the rest of the month because we've talked about our finances. So being able to have these hard conversations seems like it'll be hard to confront, but it actually provides peace. It's the Mr. Rogers movie where Tom Hanks plays Mr. Rogers, and there's the man who's passing away at the end cracks some joke about his dying, and the room gets really quiet. And Tom Hanks says, dying's a human thing, and if it's human, we can talk about it. I was like, that's it. This is a human thing. It doesn't make it come faster if you talk about it. That's superstition. And so
I want to say the gift for my loved ones is actually. This is actually legal documentation of what you want in terms of end-of-life wishes.
Power of attorney.
Yeah, power of attorney and that kind of thing. So, this, I don't know if you guys have a lawyer in your church, Father John? Do you have a lawyer?
We have a couple of lawyers, but I don't know if they may deal more like.
Not necessarily this kind of thing.
Yeah.
They may know someone.
So there are a few things that are, so we have a lawyer at St. Andrew who's working on us to just tweak this a little bit based on California law. And also to have it look more like what, because this is your advanced healthcare directive, so that it looks more like what physicians in California are used to seeing. So that might, I don't know if you guys have something, maybe as we get something more settled in writing, we could share with you what we have. But this packet is really the precursor of the other packet. As part of this discussion, when you are aware that death is imminent, and do this before that time. Do this as soon as you can, but viewing death as the Orthodox perspective, and please jump in, Father John, is that it's a journey there, and our goal as Orthodox Christians is not to prolong our life as long as possible with all the medical interventions that could possibly be done, because we don't believe this is the be-all and end-all. We really have a hope of glory and a hope of heaven, and so many, instead of looking at death as a medical emergency, that absolutely everything that could possibly be done should be done, you can choose to have a different type of death. We don't know the specifics of what that looks like, but you can, as you get close to death, choose to be on hospice, have palliative measures put in place. We actually have a beautiful example happening in our church right now of a lovely grandma who has had cancer and has decided to go onto hospice, and she's using the opportunity to say goodbye to everybody she loves. She actually asked to have her mercy meal now so that she could be there and she could greet everybody. So it's so beautiful this is the best part of the ministry for me, is to be privileged to have these sacred conversations with people and be with them at this time. And for her to share, she said on Facebook, my bags are packed and I'm ready to meet the bridegroom. So there's an element of looking forward to her death as opposed to just dreading how is this going to play out. So I think, I don't know if you have anybody in your church that's on hospice, but it's a beautiful opportunity to engage with hospice at the end of life, have things play out in a natural way, have as much control as you can so that it's peaceful and not, medical professionals trying to give you a few more days. So engaging hospice is a good idea and something to look into. So this packet is about that power of attorney for your family to access, so your advanced healthcare directive, and finances and those kinds of things. The other packet is another gift for my loved ones. So this is specifically your burial instructions. So we have found with our lawyer at St. Andrews, she looked at this and she said this is fine for California. So it's fine to use this as a document to let your family and your parish know what you want, and that you specifically, if you want this practice, the Orthodox practice of being prepared in this way, if you specify it on this document. And make sure, it's really important, so if you just fill it out and put it in your file cabinet and nobody knows, it's really not going to do any good. So really, your family needs to know, whoever is going to be in charge of your estate at the time of your death, they need to know where that packet is. And we at St. Andrew encourage people to turn it into the church office as well. So that's something you can,
a copy of it.
decide. So we have to make sure that people are aware of it.
Having a folder at home, which is clearly titled legacy folder, or something that has your information in it, that somebody who is dealing with your paperwork can go to, is very helpful. Dave Ramsey talks about this just in the financial part of it, but having the ability to know where these papers are in one place, and letting your family know, in case this happens, this is where you go, and there's a copy of, you can even put it in the folder, there's a copy of this at church, that will be very helpful to have more information for everybody to be on the same page. Because a lot of times we spend time running around back and forth trying to get everybody on the same page, and that creates a challenge.
So we're going to just describe a little bit of what happens when somebody dies at St. Andrew, in terms of how we handle it, and then obviously you guys, that may be different. You guys may tweak it or whatever to what works best for you. But at the time of death, somebody in the family calls the priest ASAP to come and do prayers. And then Father Josiah calls us right away, alerts the Burial Society, and he also alerts the mortuary that we work with. So we primarily have a relationship with Mount Rubidoux Mortuary. They've been very gracious to us, and they respect and help us to participate in preparing our loved ones in this way. They primarily are transporting our the body of the reposed, They will store the body if needed. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then they also are doing all of the paperwork that's needed, because there's not a lot of paperwork, but like
They
you
know
have
how
to
to
have
do
like
it.
a permit to drive, to have a body in your car. So that kind of thing, they're taking care of that for us. And they,
And they've liaisoned with the burial.
yes, yeah, they primarily liaison with the cemeteries. They have a relationship with the cemeteries. And I think something that's just came up last weekend was, I guess cemeteries are still behind, I think because of COVID, I'm not sure. And so that's something that our mortuary has helped, and I think Father Josiah as well, but I know our mortuary has helped in making sure cemeteries are aware of our practice, that we bury as soon as possible. So like
Yeah.
burial in, 2 months' time is not really acceptable for our practice. Or, I mean, they are,
Yeah.
part of their jobs is respecting religious practice. It's kind of a fine line of like, I mean, if you absolutely can't do it for whatever reason, but if there's any way to do it. So I think that when they've had very pointed conversations, that they have been able to get people buried faster. So,
Yeah, because it's part of, I mean, thankfully,
Is there a rule, I mean, if you're not embalming, that body cannot stay up?
yeah, not typically. Yeah, I mean, because this is a religious practice too, the Muslims have to be buried within a certain amount of time, so they are familiar.
Same rules as the Jews.
Right, so they are
right.
familiar with that. So it's not it's often, we just have to pull that card out.
or just push it a little bit
Yeah.
more sometimes.
It's just
yeah.
not, our preference. Does that make sense? We're saying like, this isn't just about what's nice for me or inconvenient for you. This is our practice. So,
So our mortuary is alerted, and then we start gathering a team. And as you know, we have a female and a male team. Our goal at St. Andrews is to have 2 teams for each male and female. We're not quite there. I mean, what typically happens is somebody dies, and then we see who's available to help. The logistics are always different. So once we've gathered a team, we plan a time, and we also plan where the preparation will be made. As we mentioned earlier, most often we're preparing in our chapel. That doesn't happen 100% of the time. There has been a few times where we have prepared our repose in the mortuary
we're at home.
or at their home if they've been home with hospice. Being at home is lovely. It's not in the, we're not in the church. That is an added blessing, but also being at the home is also, I think, very natural. It feels very natural to do it that way. Mortuary is my least favorite. So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something else?
No.
And then we gather at the chapel. As I said, we bring basically a table and then our burial kit that has what we need. And we always tell the families that they can participate in whatever way they want to. And we've had all levels of participation. I have found in my experience that it offers a way to process grief to the family to be part of the participation. And a lot of times they're anxious and feeling a little nervous before, but as they get into it, it feels so natural to them to be doing this and to caring for this loved one in this way. And so, I mean, we've had, and then I had two teenage granddaughters who their grandmother died and they had been caring for her at home. They were nervous. I mean, I understand it's nerve-wracking to see your loved one after they've passed. They were nervous to participate, but once they did, I always say, like, step out at any time, don't feel any obligation, just whatever you want to do. But once they began participating, they just were so thankful to have that opportunity to be with her and help her in that way that they knew how to do. But sometimes we've had families who, like maybe they will just come in at the end after we've done most of the preparation and anoint like their face and hands. So whatever level people are wanting to participate is fine, or if they don't want to at all, that's fine as well.
I was going to say something. This is not to toot our horn, but to also just allow you to see. Oh, sorry. I'm right here. I'll just awkwardly stand here like this. In the preparing, I was going to clip it on my beard, but
That would be weird.
in the way we have inherited this ministry and in our putting teams together, we live an hour away from St. Andrew. Usually we're going with traffic. So coordinating a team is challenging, to say the least, but it happens. But we send out a call. We have our solids that we know will answer the call, who live close to church, who can open up the door for the mortuary, who can be there to do any of the essential things. It's not ideal to live an hour away from church. But it also shows people our commitment to this happening, and to just getting to church an hour away. I mean, people think it's ridiculous, but there's parts of it that are ridiculous. But it's also been very useful to us, and we have been a part of St. Andrew as it's grown, and so we're invested in it, and we feel like it's our blood is there. So that being said, it will always be challenging if you can work together. Like a lot of people pick up the slack of us being an hour away. They will drop what they're doing and get to the church and be there for whatever needs to happen. There's a great outpouring of love. People are often nervous, as are we. As we drive, every time I have a knot in my stomach because I don't know what is going to happen. I've done it enough now that I know the knot is false evidence appearing real. It's fear, right? Once I get there, say the prayers, see my friend, I have a job to do, and I fall into it. I just say that to encourage you. There are difficulties even in our doing it, just logistically getting to church. That working together, you can lift heavy weights. So that's all I do.
Yeah. So once we're at the chapel and the body has arrived, the mortuary delivers the body, then at the back of the Christian ending, they have prayers and psalms. So there's some opening prayers that we read together, and then we have somebody who reads the psalms during the preparation while the rest of us start working. And we wash the body, we anoint the body with essential oils, oil and holy water. We dress the body, we place it in the casket. We don't do anything invasive.
And this is also, it's a very modest thing. Like, we're very aware and careful about doing things to retain that person's modesty while we're washing them, while we're bathing them.
Yes, we always have a sheet, and we just remove the sheet for the area that we're washing, and then keep the rest covered. So.
Yeah, and it's a very it's typically a very respectful, somber. Yeah.
And then we ask, whatever the person wants to be buried in. If they have a baptismal garment, if they're an adult convert and they have it, that's a beautiful thing. We do have sometimes even people who've been baptized as a baby will have an adult baptismal garment made so that they can wear it at the time of their death. Obviously, a baptismal cross, and then we suggest an icon of a saint, and often it's the saint of the person. Also, a resurrection icon is a beautiful thing to have. And then we encourage the family, typically like the day of the funeral, if they want to put flowers around the body in the coffin. that is beautiful as well. And then, we would love, so to your question about where the body is, so depending on what time the death happens, where you're where you are at when you die, sometimes the mortuary can bring the body from the place of death straight to the chapel. Sometimes no, because of whatever. If you die in the hospital, then they're picking you up and maybe they're taking you back to the mortuary until the time of the preparation. So then they'll bring a person to the chapel, and if, in an ideal situation, if we could prepare within a day and like that evening or the next morning the funeral could happen, then the person would stay there in our chapel and then be taken next door for the funeral and then go to the burial plot. But sometimes with logistics that can't always happen. So sometimes they are having, if it's a more extended period of time, they may need to go back to the mortuary, to the cold storage in the mortuary, which is not ideal. It's not the best, but we, honestly, like we're doing the best we can with the logistics that are in front of us. So I was going to say, it's beautiful. I mean, we've had this. If we could have readers reading the Psalms from after the body is prepared until the time of the funeral, that can be really challenging if it's a couple days because I know everybody has full lives, and being able to get round the clock reading of the Psalms can be very challenging. So honestly, we just do the best we can. We just get people to read. Sometimes it's like maybe a few hours this day, maybe a few hours this day, maybe a few hours before the funeral. So that's just logistically challenging, and I think beautiful in whatever way it can be.
It's worth the challenge.
And I did want to say sometimes there are circumstances that the Burial Society may not be able to fully prepare the reposed. And so in those situations as well, we just do what we can. We have had a couple car accidents or other types of situations where the reposed is, the mortuary has put them, it's kind of like, it's almost like a body bag, but it has limbs. And because of the state of the body, they're put in there. And then we've just, I think, did you guys dress? Or they were already dressed in the body? I think they were already dressed. Anyway, we've anointed like the face and the hands and said the same prayers and read Psalms, but not being able to do the full gamut. So it just depends sometimes. But we do whatever we can.
Being flexible is a big part of this ministry. Being willing to understand also that our duty is to not just the reposed, but to the living. That trying to do our best, but at the same time realizing that sometimes pushing the best may cause distance between the living. It can be, so you just have to be very sensitive. You have to navigate that with some intuition, having an ability to read the situation. So that's. So the time of the funeral happens, we try to have a Burial Society person available right before the funeral to if the family wants to place anything else. Or also just to kind of take a look to make sure everything's okay for the funeral, to have somebody there to help with that. And then Greet people.
And we do, also we have somebody on our team who makes memorial cards for the repose, since typically that's something the mortuary would be doing. So we have, most often, the family can do we get their input if they want a picture of the repose or if they want an icon. A resurrection icon we've used quite a few times. And then obviously their dates, and then we have like a favorite scripture or a favorite hymn typically. So we'll get that information and have somebody.
We have a simple template that we've made, so we can.
Yeah.
I think we have 10 cards on a page.
Yeah.
So typically, we do 5 pages and then cut them on a paper cutter. I mean, it's real simple on a cardstock. We just make it really simple. It's not super high tech.
And then, I mean, the funeral happens, the burial, and then at our church, we're trying to, in terms of the mercy meal, I mean, a mercy meal can, I think, be quite a burden depending on the family circumstances. So we actually have a separate ministry now at our church that's handling mercy meals and going to the family and saying, like, how can we help? Can we do a potluck? So, because I think, that can be challenging.
Yeah.
So I think that's the basics of what we do. So we can take questions. Yes.
There are some sanitary issues that go along with preparation of the body. So you said that you
Should I use?
care for the body at home.
Should I hand this?
Okay.
What happens? How do you deal with the sanitary?
Yeah.
I'm not used to this.
Yeah. I think it's on,
Oh,
right?
go ahead. You repeat the question.
Oh, how do we deal with the sanitary issues? So it depends. I mean,
Oh, I'm so scared.
the sanitary issues are more basic.
Sanitary or cemetery?
Sanitary.
Sanitary, yes. So the sanitary issues are more basic than you may think. So because we're not embalming, we're not draining blood. I mean, I would say most of the time, we're not encountering blood.
I agree with you, I know that.
Okay.
The body waste,
Uh-huh.
oftentimes death is released.
Yes, so,
Now you're at home trying to care for the body, you don't have all of the equipment that the mortuary has.
yeah.
That's a major issue, as I see it.
Okay, we should have given you the thing. A major issue in terms of dealing with the body waste. So we, first of all, depends.
Okay,
It
thanks.
depends on how the person comes to us. So sometimes, I mean, let's say you're on hospice, you probably have a depends on already at the time of death. So we do some massaging of the abdomen to try to get things out if there's something in there. We clean with antibacterial soap and water, and then we put on a fresh depends. So the bodily fluid, if more leaks out, it's not going anywhere. We want to get as much out beforehand because a major concern for us is smell. And so obviously we don't want a body smelling at a funeral. So we try to do everything we can to eliminate smells, and bodily waste is one of those. So, and honestly,
It's not been an issue.
it hasn't been an issue. I have had more of an issue personally with bed sores being more smelly. So we disinfect them, and then we bandage them as well as we can to be as airtight as possible. And I've actually also put essential oils on a cotton pad and put that on the bed sore before I put the bandage on. So that helps with the smell. And I think also just having it airtight helps too.
And a lot of times too, when somebody passes, even if it's a car accident, if it's something that happens quickly, that usually involves other people who take care of those things. So by the time they come to us, that's already been handled. Or if they're on hospice, they have been not eating or drinking for a while. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of fluids in what we receive.
Yeah.
So, anyone else? Great question. Thank you for that.
So, I have a few questions. So, does the state have consideration for religious practices where the person is going to get buried? Or they have their own set of rules, and regardless of the religion background, they are going to go by that?
I think there are state rules, but the state rules are more, are not as many as you would think.
Okay.
But cemeteries have rules. So a cemetery can have additional rules because basically it's like a service, so we can have our rules because it's our service. So that's something to look into actually when you're looking at buying a burial plot is if you want something more natural, does this cemetery account for that.
My question is that has a lot to do with embalming the body. Is how is that like important to the state or the cemetery? And that's what we are actually after, right? Embalming the body is very unwanted in the Orthodox Church, so.
Can I answer that too? It might help. Because part of wanting to have a natural burial as much as possible is to avoid, if at all possible, embalming. And that's why they're talking about having the funerals close to the time of the departure of the soul from the body, if possible. And that's because one of the things we did when I was up in Idaho in our youth group, we took the kids to the local mortuary down in Arco and wanted to be able to, we wanted to talk about death and the resurrection, okay? And so we knew the guy, Bud Marvel was his name, and we decided to go down there. And when we went, the kids were so tight. They were wound so tight. There was, everyone was just stressed out to the max because it's a fearful thing, right? This has been the first time many of them have been to a place like this. And so what happens is when we go to the casket room, or we go actually to the general room where they have people that receive people, you couldn't get a peek out of the kids. They wouldn't ask a question. They wouldn't say anything, all right? They were just so closed. Then we got to the casket room, and somebody made a quip about the caskets, and people, the nervous laughter all came out, and they were finally able to flood of questions. We get into the preparation room, which they also call the embalming room, and it's all floor to ceiling, almost tile. And of course, they're wondering what is the drain at the bottom. Now, this is an old mortuary up in Idaho, so it may have changed since then. But they asked what the drain was for, and that on the floor, and they said, well, that's where the blood goes. Remember, in the Jewish tradition, the person's buried with the whole person. There's life in the blood. So the blood is an important part of the person. So we're not throwing the blood into the sewer. All right, that's our goal. We're not trying to do if we can help it. If there's 9/11 or certain incidents, things that happen, we can't control that. But that's why, if you even saw the movie The Passion of the Christ, which it looked like it, might be a Roman Catholic fixation on blood, it was not really that. It was actually very historically accurate. Where, if you see Saint Procla brings to Mary, the mother of Jesus, the Virgin Theotokos, these cloths, and she's trying to get all the blood on the stone that she can, so to bury that part with Christ the same way. And so we're trying to make sure that can be an emphasis. Where we run afoul of the state is if we're transporting bodies across state lines is where it gets to be problematic. Usually the thing is if we have it within our own county, I don't know if there's county rules that you can maybe address that. I don't think, are there any county rules? I think it's state line rules.
Yeah, I think the state, I don't know. I do think there are some cemeteries that require embalming, but it's not a state requirement.
Yeah, so that's what you have to watch out for is the cemetery. Because where my father was buried, and my mom, up in Mackay, Idaho, because there's no, forgive me, I'm not trying to be mortuary bashing, but this was a 60-minute special which you can go on and look up. It's probably been recorded. You can Google it and watch it. The mortuary industry has really made a lot of money off of death. And if they can get the local county and the local city to pass ordinances that make it so that to push these issues. So in the only cemetery that we had there in Mackay, Idaho, all we had to have for Mom was a hole 6 feet deep and to place her in some sort of container. It could have even been a wrapped blanket if we wanted to. There was no other requirement. Yet down for my father, and because we hadn't thought about this as Orthodox at the time, my father suffered greatly from cancer, and the mortuary handled it down in Arco, at a different county. Their requirement was he had to be embalmed, which they paid. My mom had to pay out the money for the embalming. He had to be in a container of a certain quality, at least minimum, before he was cremated. So even though this was what the local mortuary had enforced that if you're going to go work through them. So that's why what we're trying to do, what we really need to do as part of our ministry is find a mortuary that's willing to work with us and a cemetery. Okay, that's the key thing. You know, now, the only thing you didn't talk about though was death certificates. Can you explain that? And that the mortuary helps you with, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, hospice is great for a death certificate because they can sign. But then the mortuary, yes, the mortuary is the one who is finalizing that. That is not, there are churches who, I mean, like the Barnums, the Barnas, I don't know, I think that there's ways to get around that with having a mortuary do the certificate, but in our situation, the mortuary always does it. The death certificate, yeah.
Not sure how you get around it, because this thing had to report to the federal government, Social Security, and
Right.
Yeah.
all of those things have to be reported.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, just locally, since I went through this in 2021 with my wife, there is a cemetery, and the name escapes me at the moment, getting old, but it's up in Sorrento Mesa. Very big cemetery, and basically if you hit them with, as you said, the Jewish card, and say, I want a funeral, an Orthodox funeral, very much like a Jewish funeral, they understand that. They understand not embalming, they understand burying as soon as possible. A plain wooden casket, basically.
Yeah.
An unvarnished casket is what I had. And so, and they, because I want to be buried with her, they just dug the hole deeper.
Yeah,
So
that's
they'll take
beautiful.
off the stone and put me in when it's my time.
Yeah.
The
So-
church in Pomona, there's a question back there as well. The church in St. Peter's in Pomona, they actually, they bought, they found a local cemetery and they bought plots. So they were very proactive in saying, this is our family section. So it's a great idea. It helps with a lot of the problems last minute, somebody who hasn't prepared. So, and people can then purchase it from the church. So,
Yeah,
Something similar was done here in San Diego County. Unfortunately, they were short-sighted. Didn't take more than a couple of years for the whole thing.
yeah.
yeah, just as a statement for everyone's awareness, that the cemetery that Frank is talking about in Sorrento Valley actually does have an Orthodox chapel on site as well.
Oh,
I'm not sure of the availability of any plots right now, unfortunately, but that does exist. It's not just something that's in the old world.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
beautiful. Yeah.
I was going to say Mount Hope down in southeast San Diego, where a lot of the Russians are, seems
Okay.
to still have space. So
Okay.
I wanted to mention a couple things. One, which everybody forgets with all the legal things, is guardianship.
Uh-huh.
That's really important, maybe even more important than a will of your children
Uh-huh.
if something happens.
We talk about kids
Yes,
under 18 or over 18.
under 18. Yeah, over 18 there.
They're adults. Yeah.
And
Section 5.
Oh, section
And
5.
on the embalming, what I ran into with my parents is, you can say you don't want it, but you got to make sure they take it off the bill.
Oh,
That's really important.
yeah.
Because with my mother, we saw it on the bill, and we said, we don't want her embalmed. And
Yeah.
so they took it off. But my father made his arrangements at the same time, so 8 years later, but they didn't take it off of his bill.
Oh,
And we didn't want him embalmed, so you really have to be
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
ball. And then I have a quick question. This is going to sound really stupid, but what is a mercy meal?
you want to answer? You answer. Oh,
Yeah, the meal of mercy, in the Orthodox Church, we do things it's a hospitality, it's still a hospitality type of thing, and where the people are coming to pay their last respects, the family of the departed usually hosts a meal for them. I come from Idaho, so in Idaho, we never did anything like that. In fact, everybody, even if they were Catholic or Mormon in a small town of 600 people, would bring food to the church or whatever was going to be there, so that the meal afterwards, all the people could do it, wouldn't be a burden on the family. And there's some families that come from some traditions, that's a huge, important thing to do. So we have to be very, very careful we don't trod on the feet of some people who, in their culture, that's something you help provide. Once again, as an act of hospitality to the people that are coming for that, and people provide for that. But on the other hand, there might be a way for some of the people who don't have that as part of their tradition, maybe to assist out, like you said before, having something like a potluck where you ask people to come, and then there's then a big financial burden on the people. Because, you know, what's amazing, the things we're talking about, I've had some of our senior citizens who didn't know any better because they didn't know I couldn't do a funeral for them, who approached me because of their figuring out their end of year costs. And they said, Father, can I be cremated when I die? And I explained to them why we couldn't be able to do a funeral for them. And then they told me, well, this is how much it's going to be, the cheapest I can be able to find it in order to be buried. And that's one of the reasons why we started talking about this, because I don't want anyone to have to be in that situation if it has to be, because it can be so expensive. So we don't necessarily add on even more of an expense, you know, if we can bring it down. Can you give us an idea of what you think is maybe the average cost of a funeral that you guys are doing? If that can help us. Who else is the next question?
Three.
Yeah, I mean, so this is just ballpark figures. The mortuary is charging around $1,000, which seems like a lot, but it's nothing, right? Wow. So
and this speaks to having a good relationship with them too.
Yeah.
So
then, so typically, I mean, not always, but typically our parishioners are seeking caskets from St. Barbara's Monastery. They're beautiful, beautiful, simple caskets. I mean, natural. But of course, like this small women's monastery, I mean, they have a carpenter working for them. And it might be somebody in San Diego. Okay. So anyway, just like we have a lot of deaths at St. Andrews because we're a larger community, and it's challenging just to keep up with us. So anyway, hopefully they can get more people to help them. But their caskets run between like $1,000 to $1,500. So so that would be around your,
3,000.
Yeah, 3,000 for the cost, but that doesn't include the burial plot. So the burial plot is something that is additional. We have had some parishioners who've been buried at St. Paisius Monastery in Arizona, and some that have been buried at St. Anthony's in Arizona. Our mortuary has helped with we've been able to transport a body across state lines without being embalmed to be buried in one of those monasteries. I think it's a donation-based thing out there at the monastery, so I don't think, it's an option, I think, especially if you don't have anything else that you can do. But definitely purchasing a plot sooner instead of at the last minute is definitely going to be cheaper.
Do you have any idea about what the average plot for a cemetery is?
I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, I know we have a relationship with I think Mount Olive Cemetery in Riverside, and I don't want to say it because, I could be totally wrong, but I mean, it's thousands, right?
That was made of, you could be looking at $5,000.
If you
Yeah.
can get it, if you can get it.
If you can get it. Well, forget the Orthodox second.
Right.
Just buying a plot.
Mount Hope is like 3 to 5.
Okay.
It could be a double vault where one's on top of the other.
Yeah,
side by
so
side.
when it is double, are you just paying for one?
Yes.
Okay.
For plot.
One plot,
But
okay.
they paid my funeral costs at the same time.
Two burial costs.
And the work that requires to dig the earth.
Right, there is a charge for opening it, and then
Okay, but you only have to buy one
And you
plot.
have the voltage you have to put in.
Oh, and
Blacktop.
some cemeteries, right, so for like bottom one, you have to have the vault. The cement to keep the,
Both.
Either both
Yeah.
have to be in.
yeah, so some
So
cemeteries,
it depends on the cemetery.
yeah.
Depends on the cemetery. Some cemeteries may require the vaults, which will cost a lot more money. Some don't.
Yeah,
I'm moving along back to the Mercy Meal. As it being a mercy for everyone, not just the family, because in Christ we are all family. So it's an extension of the communion that we already have, and it is a time for us to be together and to face the reality that our loved one has passed, but is still part of that community. So we drink together, we cry together, we tell stories about it. We have an opportunity to express what's going on with us at that time. And it's not part of a Western culture. It's over, we're done, we've moved on. This is now a reality that we're facing, and we begin it with a meal, the breaking of the bread together. This is very Orthodox. So mercy for not just the family, but for all of us who are affected by that loss and by the hope in their resurrection and our continued relationship with them. That's why we eat together.
I don't want it.
You don't want it? I need
You
it.
give it to him. Very well said. Thank you.
Okay.
You're hired.
Hi. Hello? Yeah, first question, if I could have more than one, please. What are the main obstacles for getting our loved one buried within 3 days, and how can those be overcome? Like, for example, could you get the casket beforehand and keep it in your
Absolutely.
home?
That's yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And that's that part of, it becomes a part of storage too, right? Father Josiah has floated the idea of using one as a bookshelf in the bookstore, so we always have one on hand. A couple of our parishioners have purchased them and are keeping them in their garages. So that is a really big part of it, because oftentimes we are hustling trying to find a casket for somebody who hasn't prepared one.
And what do you need the mortuary to do? For example, say if you want the body brought home, do you have to, and you mentioned you needed a permit to transport. I couldn't just put my loved one in my car and drive him back to my house. Would I have to get a mortuary involved to bring the body back to the home? And what else does the mortuary do if you want to cut them out as much as possible?
You want to talk to it? Okay. Serafima has an answer.
So after speaking with somebody in North County,
Closer.
sorry. So after speaking with somebody in North County, one of the mortuaries there said that the state of California will allow families to do the transport. So basically the way it's triggered is that, for instance, somebody like will enter into what's called an EDRS. An EDRS is a system that only businesses have, but if we have somebody with like a license, and I believe we do know somebody, I think he's from St. Andrew that lives locally here, that might be able to put it into the system for us, and then then we can get the death certificate, and after getting the death certificate, we can get the transport permit. So if we have the process in place and already have spoken to the right people, we would make contact and relationship where we can make this process smooth, hopefully, Lord willing, that we can basically get the transport permit. We did have a case where we transported the body ourselves from San Diego to Riverside, and it worked fine, but definitely we do want to get the permit in case they ask, what are you doing with the body? And so, but it's really important that it goes into the system first right away. And if somebody is in hospice, the nurses they're the ones that would quote unquote declare death. So there's a point where death is declared, and once it's declared, then it goes into the system, and then that's what triggers everything as far as documentation and allowing us to do what we need to do as part of the society.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so let's just say your loved one is at a friend's house or something and passes. How would you get that process initiated quick enough to bring the body back to your house? Or do you just say, I'll just do it?
Typically,
I mean, it's going to be challenging if it's not somebody on hospice, because then they have to determine the cause of death. Yes, so I think if you're not under the care of a physician with an ailing, and you're ailing, then yeah, I mean, that's been a struggle, because the coroner, now that's a whole different bureaucracy, and it can be super crazy, and they can be there a long time, depending. I mean, we had a couple deaths during COVID, and that was really awful, how long they had to.
It's also really important to not demonize the mortuary or the coroner. They have a hard job to do, and oftentimes they become callous to it. And when they see us show up, they're like, "Who are these people?" Right? So we have to match their professionalism and maybe even up it, and say, like, you help me, right? Because I'm here. I'm not here to make your life more difficult. This is our practice again, and saying, but in a situation like that, like that's going to trigger all sorts of things that you just can't avoid. It's just part of.
Right, so, say you get the coroner or the mortuary involved because your loved one died somewhere else, are they going to take the remains to the mortuary and put it right in the freezer right away? And how long does it take to get the body released to you if you want to bring it home?
That's a situational thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Typically, the coroner, they would take them to the coroners to determine cause of death, and then transfer it to the mortuary. So that's kind of worst case scenario, but at the same time, there's different questions that need to be answered there.
Right.
So, you had something to say.
We need were you have something else to say? Okay. Oh, go ahead. Okay.
You see, this gentleman yields to the
So,
lady.
Reader
from
John,
top.
to answer your question about like if the moment happens, like that moment, and what do you do right away? So this is why this meeting is really important, so that we can have this information like in our systems, in our database, and basically the first person that gets that knows is family, right? And so family would have that information, what to do right away. The very, very first step is contact Father John, and Father John would notify our team from the Burial Society, and then depending on what the final wishes were, then we can go there. We could go from there, and ideally, what we would like to say in the Burial Society is that we would love to take. We would love to take care of every single one of you, and so we don't want you guys to sign off yourselves to a mortuary right away. Give us at least a day or two to figure out what we as a community we can do for you all and for us. So try not to go to the mortuary right away, because they tend to want to do things that would eventually go against the final wishes, and then there's nothing we can do about it anymore. So
It would be
just
great if the parish had a checklist or something that we all know.
We do.
exactly-
Yeah.
Okay.
Which again speaks to having a great relationship with the mortuary, so that they understand your needs, that they understand, so that they're not seeing us as an annoyance, but they want to help us.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have a very blessed relationship
Yes.
with your mortuary.
Yeah.
Something our parish needs to find.
Yeah.
That we need to be associated.
Right.
What I'm confused about is our Jewish brethren have solved this problem a long time ago. They have enough juice. Nobody gives them any static. The Arab community has followed right in suit. The Mormons also have a similar practice. Why haven't we gone to the Jewish community, for example? Said, hey,
Yeah.
how are you guys doing it? Help us.
Yeah, in fact,
It seems to me that would be in
No,
fact,
it's
maybe even partner with the Jewish mortuaries.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a great word, yeah.
And actually, I have to get that information too. I was, oh man, I'm blanking. Maybe Deacon, you can help me with that. I was also told about someone who is, he might be Chaldean Catholic, but is aware of our practices, and also might be someone and this person, it's in El Cajon, has a mortuary there, but also East County, yeah. So I think that but it'd be also nice if we could find something that's a little bit up north if we needed to, but at least we can have a couple of them to be able to work with. That'd be a helpful thing.
And praying that God provides that too is a big part, because there's somebody out there who God has been preparing for you. So,
A really practical question as far as these go. What if our loved one has dementia or Alzheimer's? A lot of this requires signatures, and how do you make sure that that gets done for that person? Do you have to establish a power of attorney yourself to be able to
Sounds like
sign these?
we're
kind
not
of
lawyers,
forms for
so we
them?
can't
Yeah.
speak to that, but that is something that, oh, there we go. We have a definite answer.
You have, if they have dementia, it just depends on who it is, you know, if it's your mom, or, I mean, I had to deal with my mother, that was the problem. She died though in a care facility, so there were hospice people there. You work with the hospice people if you have to, or attorney. It's not like you're declaring them incompetent if they're, you know, it's not like taking a person who's got a job and is working and has a lot of assets. Usually the people are elderly and you're dependent or somehow you're in control. I think I never had any problem with that. My mom died, another friend of ours died. It was fairly smooth.
Usually when they put you in hospice, or if you're admitted to the hospital, they'll ask you as the patient to designate who makes the decisions.
There's power of attorney and there's medical power.
Yeah, right.
So that might be a good personal question to be able to ask, especially for like you having a situation at your own home, right? Because, and that's also trying to working with family members, because you may have family members that are not on the same page with that, and that's where it gets to be difficult, as you talked about, some that are Orthodox and some that are not, or even sometimes that are Orthodox. Okay, so, but the thing is, I just know, for example, that's why the whole idea of planning ahead, and even each one of us, which we still need to do some of our planning. Okay, so that no, seriously, my mom, when she found out she had vascular dementia, she was a nurse. She had fallen before, or she had an incident before where she had a CAT scan, brain scan, and then when she had fallen after that, thankfully, her brother, my uncle's a neurosurgeon, and had her do another scan, and they saw that the brain matter was shrinking at a rate way higher than it should have been, which was thus vascular dementia. At that point, she contacted my sister, Tony, who was living in Boise, and called me up because they were asking questions like, what do we do afterwards? So she gave my sister Tony the power of attorney to help make those decisions. And then they were running stuff off of me because I had become an Orthodox priest at that point, and they were asking about cremation, like what happened to Dad. And I begged them, well, she wasn't Orthodox at this point, and I begged them, please, no, please, we'll do what we can to be able to bury you. You know, it's not that big of a difficult thing. Now, what's really neat is right before she passed away, well, some months before, we were able to bring her into the Orthodox Church, which was really, really sweet. But that's why having these things taken care of in advance, really, and then having it aware with the other family members, which can be delicate if they're not Orthodox, okay? And then also but making sure that the church is aware, the family is aware, so that this is not something that is, like you said before, stuck in a file, and then the family members go do their own thing. Because once that happens, then we're put into a pickle. So, but the planning ahead is a real big thing.
Are you doing anything to prepare people way in advance? In other words, pre-need planning. What does it take?
Here we are.
Yes, we're trying. We're trying, yeah.
I mean, you've talked a lot about preparation of the body, but, you know, I think most people don't think about get this thing out of the way now.
Yeah, the paperwork in your hands will help. We're trying to do that at St. Andrew. We're trying to hopefully have a weekend where Father Josiah speaks, and then we have a presentation, and we have other people come and talk about death and about preparation and
End of life, estate planning, and all of that. And, you know, it also, there's stuff here, like, we need to talk about our estates so that we could potentially help the church. I mean, there's things, you know, talking about all of this stuff as soon as possible and getting it taken care of is helpful to everybody. So.
And being able to see it as relationship building, too. That has to be the place you're working from. Love is more important. So as you talk to, I'm having, my mom's not Orthodox, talking to her, she wants to be cremated because she doesn't want to be a burden. It's out of her love for me and my sister that she wants to do that. And I've had conversations with her where she's crying. Thank you so much for explaining that to me. She hasn't said one way or the other yet, but I don't feel like I have to have an answer every time I talk to her. I'm just slowly showing her a different option. and that she's not a burden, that it's an opportunity. This is one of the heartaches of people who give in too early, who decide to take their own lives, is they think, I don't want to be a burden. Well, please let me love you. Give me the opportunity to bear that burden. That's Christian. So slowly, some of these conversations are hard. Sometimes you won't know what to say to somebody in your family who you know is maybe opposed to you. Pray. Right? It's not an emergency. It's an opportunity. So being able to just pray and say, Lord, give me the words to say to my loved one who's concerned about me. They may have a reaction to death that comes off as being angry at you. It's not personal. They're just afraid. So being able to understand them, comfort them, and say, like, this is what I want. And the reasons I want it are this, this, and this. Understanding why we do this is really important because you need to explain it. Give a good reason for the faith that is in you. So being able to take the opportunity to say, well, we don't believe in embalming because of this. And the idea that part of our life is in our blood is a very, people don't think about that. People don't, we're so used to not thinking about what all of this means because it's easy to not think about it. It's hard to think about. So turning your attention to it and saying, like, I know this is a hard conversation. Let's schedule to start talking about it. Let's try to normalize it so that you can understand my needs, I can understand your needs. We can make a plan because this is something that's important to me. But working from a place of love, primarily. Again, with your family, with your friends, with your church, with the mortuary, with the coroner, with everybody you come across. We had a dear friend of ours who passed away, Presbyterian Catherine. And as I sat with her in City of Hope, and she had the myrrh streaming icon over her abdomen, as she had monks on Mount Athos praying for her, as she had a moment of saying to me, it kind of feels like it's not working. And I said, well, maybe it's giving you the strength to do what you need to do. And that helped both of us in that moment because she was afraid of what she was walking into and I was afraid of losing her. I almost did it without crying. Seeing the whole picture, though, gives you strength. Being able to say, this is an opportunity. Christ is in this moment. God has not left the kitchen, right? He knows that the kettle's on, right? He knows all of it. Working from a place of love, it's not us against them. It's us with them. That's what I would say. That's a great challenge because a lot of times we want to put orthodoxy, we want to be orthodox. Great. Part of that is being loving. Maybe the major part of it. So.
I have a question, please.
Yes.
So it's a question regarding our youth.
Yeah.
Who are over 18 years old, but they're, in this life where they haven't established a will, they're just establishing their life and something happens, right? How is that handled since they're over 18 years old, they're not minor anymore? You have a parent who thinks, okay, I'm going to cremate this kid, and you have a parent who wants to bury this child the Orthodox way. So have you been through this experience? Like the experience you mentioned earlier, the father is Orthodox, the child didn't have a will. The father buried the child.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had that, thank God. I mean, I think that plays out however it's going to, we do what we can, but we only have so much that we can do.
But setting an example is a big part of it, right? And maybe having those conversations with your young people, saying, so as a church, we're working on this together. Put it in the bulletin, make it normal to
and we've
talk
had
about.
young adults at our church fill out the packet. I think it's just, one thing.
That's where I was going. Is that do you prepare your teens?
Yeah,
okay, you're going to be 18 years old. This is reality, part of reality.
Yeah.
This may happen. How do you picture yourself being handled?
Yes.
After the fact. Is
Yeah,
that
because they don't,
conversation
it's
with
not
OG?
on their
Radar.
radar.
Yeah.
I think a great thing that we're trying to do, and we haven't implemented it yet, is even if you had like a yearly like day like this
Tune up.
every year,
Okay.
where like, okay, so where are we at with this packet? And like, do you need, like maybe even have like some people like, do you need help with certain aspects of this packet? Do you need help with like, maybe if there was a lawyer or something, just to bring everybody together again and say, let's keep working on this. Let's work on this again. You know, it's so that it's not a one-time shot of fill out this paperwork and then we don't talk about it again.
Right, right.
Because it's easy to put it aside. Yeah.
Very true. And my other question is that, you know, I had the opportunity to do the readings for my friend's mother in the church. It was the first time I've ever done it. And it was really very transforming experience. It was just very beautiful. And so my question is that how do you offer that opportunity for people to actually read over, you know, when this body temple is in the church?
A lot of
Do you
times,
send out emails?
yeah, a lot of
Do
times Father
you-
Josiah will
Do you have
spearhead
an
that.
arrangement for that?
What?
Do you have an arrangement for that?
No, I
Like,
mean,
Not.
is there a reading committee that?
We're working on that too.
Or,
there's not a reading committee.
Okay.
Not yet. That would be great though. That's what.
Yes.
That's what. So when people come to us and they say, "I would love to be a part of the Burial Society," but because they think that that's all there is, but there's visitation of the graves to make sure that they're kept clean. There is visiting people before their death. There is definitely having a team who's willing and nearby who can come and pray. Like all of that is the bigger picture. So yes.
So I'll give just a couple of examples of that. We've had that happen here over for some of our people who wanted to have vigil overnight, right? Remember, and so I think the last one we had was Jeanette Zaror for her mom that was here, Mary, right? And then also, sorry, yeah, you're right, for Thespina. So that's the last one we had, is Thespina. Okay, so we've had at least several of those. Some of you guys were all new, except for you remember Tom Baz. Does anyone else remember? I'm the only one else who knows. Oh, you know Tom Baz. Very good. That's right. You've been here longer than I have. Okay. So Tom Baz was one of our treasurer, that was longtime treasurer, and he had gone to live with his wife up at San Simeon, and she reposed in the Lord before him. And then when he finally fell asleep in the Lord, he gave some very clear instructions to his family, to his children. Now, he was at church every single Sunday. A lot of them weren't. But he said, look, this is what I expect for you to do for me. And he did an overnight vigil for them, and they did it. They did it.
Paperwork, probably.
Yeah, he had it very clear in his paperwork. He had it clear in his paperwork, and they came through for it. It was just amazing what they did. And I think,
copy of that? Something, an example. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit and then do mine, right?
yeah.
I don't know how to really establish something that's very, to communicate very, like very specific, very clear. Unless if I have several examples and I could choose, okay, what is it that I want to do? Am I going to be buried at El Camino, or like go be buried in Syria? Or, you know, how is that handled across, you know, the seas, or let's just, you know, just like 15 minutes away? So how do you, like, is there...
Well, the common practice when you ask anybody, and it's an unknown, is I look forward to hearing back from you about that. So start investigating it, right? Be the forerunner and say, these are going to be my unique challenges. Start asking questions. Start praying for God's open doors to bring people to you who answer those. So your questions will give answers to somebody else. So because not everybody has your unique situation. So start asking. You know, ask around. Yeah. Sorry. Are we ready to take a?
My question will be about this
Okay.
advanced directive. I had to do an advanced directive a few years back because of a health crisis and surgery. And one thing I ran across was, okay. And somebody else in our parish at St. Catherine's ran into the same thing. There's nothing in the advanced directive about making sure the priest can get there. And maybe if your lawyer is rejigging this thing, because we kind of had to rejig it for ourselves and say, I don't want you to take all these, measures, what they call them, unless the priest can't get there, and then do it until the priest can get there, Or, you know what I'm trying
I
to
see,
say?
yeah, like, keep you alive until the priest can get there.
Yeah,
is what
something
you're
like
saying.
that.
Yeah.
So if there's a way he can jig that to.
Right, that's a great
that
point. Are we going to take,
We're like an hour and a half right now.
Right. There's a couple of things that we need to talk about. Tomorrow after church, after Agape, Chris and Christy have offered to stay over again for people that weren't here today.
not as full as this, but if there's questions,
Yeah.
we'll be around for coffee hour.
You might be surprised. Anyway, you can come again, and maybe there's some people that are asking questions that you don't know, but you don't have to. I'm just making that happen. Also, regarding the forums, at some point we're going to have maybe once a month a table that you can come by, and we can, if you're stuck on something or if you have a question, you can come by, and hopefully we can help you. So yeah, we'll be. We're not gonna. This isn't the last that you're gonna hear of us. So.
I think that's a great idea.
We'll be back.
Christie,
Hold
does
on.
Father Turner have everybody's form that wishes to have them filled out on file?
We're working on, there's a few.
Does he- I'm
Does he
sorry.
have,
Yeah, Father Trennan over at your parish
Yeah.
has,
He
They have a
has
place.
the people who have completed it, he has them.
oh, that's good.
Yeah, but it's not as many people as we would like. Yeah.
Regarding that, there's one person that I know of in this church that has filled out his final wishes, and he posted them on his refrigerator so that his wife can find it real fast. She'll know exactly where to go. She doesn't like it there, but it's there. And, so.
yeah, there was. And then I think after this, we'll take a little break.
Is it practice here to use one casket for two people or more, or they don't do this here?
No, not typically. It's one.
But you can legally or no? Back home, we have everyone in one casket.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of the answer to that question. Sorry. If you can have more than one person in a casket?
No, I don't think so.
The consensus is no. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the answer is no. That's what I'm getting. Do you mean to reuse? No, I think do you
I think
mean to
any of those
reuse it
answers
or
would
at
be
the
no.
same time?
So, like my grandma died. 10 years, they opened the casket. They put
Wow. Yeah, using. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
But it's not gonna happen in
I don't
California.
think it happens here, but yeah.
Yeah.
I have to pay for two.
Yeah. Or learn how to build two.
Yeah.
You could, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're gonna.
Okay.
Oh.
Two more questions.
Two more
Two more
questions.
questions. Oh. Oh. Okay.
You had mentioned that there was a time when your school, your St. Andrew's Academy, was in session, and you also had the mortuary come with the body.
Yeah.
And as a convert, I'm still learning how to wrap my mind around Orthodox burials, Orthodox understanding of death, falling asleep in the Lord. And I have 4 young children
Yeah.
that we have people, that are older that are starting to fall asleep in the Lord in our parish. And I don't want to give them exposure to that. I want to demystify it for them, but I really don't know what to say and how to say it and how to answer their questions. Do you have any Orthodox resources for parents for their children?
I would say Christina Ryman, frankly.
Yeah. I would also pray in the moment. Don't force. I've seen people force their children to kiss a loved one, and it just looks. I've had to do it as a child. It's traumatizing. We think that we're doing something good when actually we're maybe causing some harm. So, as the child's willing and able, even like just touching the hand it can be a great effort for a child. Even just looking at death can be, our Lord wept, right? It's jarring. It's not how we were made. So normalizing it by talking about it is probably the best thing. It's hard when children come to the awareness of like, wait, you're going to die? Wait, I'm going to die? All of those things. But we have hope, right? That furthers the conversation. So.
Okay, we need to wind this up. Antipas also has a question, and he rang the bell first.
I just wanted to say, I know a lot of you had questions as Reader John was asking. What happens if your loved one reposes at home? California does have a home funeral directive by law that you can actually have and care for the body of the repose at home and even have the funeral at your home. So it's important to have these health directives filled out ASAP, because if you're not prepared, what will happen is even if it happens at home, people don't know what to do. They call the funeral home or cemetery, whatever. And then once you sign that release, it's done. They have the power of attorney over that body. So to know the laws, that you actually have the right to keep the reposed at home, taken care of. And California just requires that you maintain sanitation. That's it.
And there's a gentleman named Christopher Nigeris who lives in our neighborhood, and he actually, his wife, he's not Orthodox. He's just a kind of a, I don't know if calling him a hippie's he's very natural. Survivalist. He's a survivalist. So when his partner died, he prepared her at home to the best of his ability, and he wrote a beautiful book about it, which I was in conversations with him about his survival teaching, and I said, I just came across this that you did, and he just sent me the PDF. So I haven't read through the whole thing, but he very much followed that. He took care of her at home and prepared her to the best of his ability, and did that. So even outside of the church, it's something that people want to do.
Christine, attending funerals for kids, having your kids attend funerals is very natural. I had people at the cathedral, Anastasia was a toddler, and they were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is a natural part of our life, and making it as real as you can, and then answering the questions as they come up, as Chris had said. But you don't have to answer them by yourself. We're all here for you.
Yeah.
I think Father needs to say more, die well. Let's die well, guys. Are you planning now to die well?
Yeah.
Not just this, which is very important, but are you repenting? Are you ready? Those kinds of things, so that we're always remembering that we're in the presence of the Lord. And that's what the epistle, the last line, for we are always with the Lord. That's so comforting to me. Think about that. We're never apart from the Lord. Until he comes again, he's with us still, because he can do that. Oh, no.
I don't want it still.
No, I wasn't trying to grab it. I was trying to get closer to you.
I'm glad I don't need the microphone.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Go ahead. You're going to wind it.
Do you want me to? Yeah. Or did you have any final words?
So
or
are we going to meet then again with, or is it too late now?
I don't, what time is it?
It's 3:16.
We have to 5 o'clock.
Well, yeah, but these guys have been up here for,
No, I mean, it's okay. If we take a little break and then we can talk.
I think a break is,
We're
we're going to
staying
take a
with
break
Ryman.
now.
Yeah.
We're at the
Okay,
Ryman
so,
Inn.
And then we do, I mean, our plan was to talk about more specifics of the
Yeah.
preparation with anybody who wants that.
Right.
So we're totally up for doing that. Maybe we can sit when we do that?
Yeah.
You can sit.
Okay. We could do it in a smaller setting, but
Yeah.
let's just take a little break.
Yeah, so thank you. So thank you so much for coming. we're up at St. Andrew. We're easy to get a hold of. Just call the Rymans if you need any other help. Or Bill, yes. Several. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So cocktails will be served.
Oh,
All right. Okay,
thank you.
3:30, 3:30.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was great. I have my prints from my friend. I'm going to go get real quick. You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, I am.
Okay,
Oh, that's right. Yes, I know you. Yeah. Oh, I saw this mic on. Sorry.
Yes.
Mic on. My I'm wired.
Will it be okay? Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you.
Follow me.
Okay.
Here.